All right, well, good evening, everybody. It's the top of the hour, and I want to dive right in because we don't have, I'm trying to keep this to 30 minutes. But welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Here in New York, we got a little hint of spring in the air, so I hope that's got a spring in your step as well, or wherever you are, you're doing well. My name is Charlie Hopkins. I'm the Managing Director of Teaching and Learning here at the Council on Foreign Relations. And after a decade of teaching high school history and other social studies classes, I now work at the council supporting teachers like you who are teaching a variety of subjects using our resources from CFR Education. Our plan for the evening, I'll say just a couple of words of introduction about CFR and CFR education, and then we'll dive right in and talk about teaching geography, some of the resources we have for teaching geography, some of the things that we have to support you in your work of helping your students to be geographic thinkers. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end to answer questions. So if you have questions, as questions occur to you over the next 20-25 minutes or so, please feel free to stick them in the Q&A function in the Zoom window. And as we get towards the end of the half hour, I will do my best to answer them. And I also want to thank my colleague Logan, who's here with us behind the scenes. He's going to drop some links in the chat as we go in case you miss something or need to want to copy something down that we talk about on the screen. But mainly, I'll show you how to get there yourself so you can navigate the website confidently on your own. So let's dive in. Teaching geography. CFR Education, we offer free expert-informed resources on a variety of topics. We have readings, we have videos, we have timelines, we have interactive resources, charts, and more. And we'll see a bunch of examples of that today. We're focused on geography, but we have a lot about all kinds of global issues, history, foreign policy. Anytime current events are coming into your classroom, either because the students bring them or because they're in your curriculum, we have great resources for you. You can see all the topics that we cover over here on the right. We also have simulations that invite students to step into the roles of decision makers. It's a great way to build engagement. It's a lot of fun and works on a whole bunch of really great social studies skills: writing, research, collaboration, critical thinking, communicating with your fellow students. One of my favorite things that we produce. We'll look at an example of that today. And all of this comes with comprehensive teaching resources. So we have lesson plans, classroom activities, essay and discussion questions for you to pull from. We also have a number of pages of curriculum alignments. We'll be looking at the AP Human Geography curriculum alignment that we have. And we offer professional development events, short webinars like we have tonight. We've done more comprehensive things in the past, and you can check out our website to see both some recordings of past events, as well as some upcoming events. We're going to a few conferences this month. Some are on location, few are free online. So if you're excited by tonight and you want to learn more, go check it out. A couple other things I'll say. We at the Council on Foreign Relations, we're over 100 years old, and we have over a century of history as a non-partisan independent think tank. We are not here to push any particular point of view. We're here to help our students better understand some of the questions and issues that we face. And I can't say this enough, everything on the CFR Education website is free. There's no login, there's no cost. You don't have to deal with passwords or getting a purchase order from somebody in an office somewhere. It's completely free. So with that, let's dive in, and I'm gonna leave the slides now and just have you all look over my shoulder as I navigate our website. So here's our homepage. Again, our website is just education.cfr.org. And the first place that I want to take folks who are geographers is to what we call our regions of the world section. So one way to get to a lot of our resources is to head to the Learn tab. This is where you will find all the things that are meant for students: readings, videos, anything that you might assign to a student or that you want to read for yourself to learn something. I'm going to scroll down. You see, these are all of our topics. A lot of these are relevant in small or large ways to geography. I don't want to diminish them. I'm sure many of you talk about climate, talking about development, economic issues, migration. But I want to start us off here at regions of the world. This is our way of taking a look at the different regions of the world and some of the major topics that they all face. So I've scrolled past some of these, sort of more detailed sections. I'm going to go down here where it says learning journeys. This is where we have gathered all the resources from regions of the world and sorted them by region. So in our regionalization right now, we have 6 regions. You can see them there: Europe and Eurasia as a region, the Americas, Middle East and North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, South and Central Asia, and East Asia and the Pacific. We're actually right in the middle of a really exciting time at CFR Education. We're revamping these. So you may, as you're exploring, notice there's some slight variation from one region to another, sort of in format a little bit, because one of the great things about running a website, as opposed to having a book or a textbook of some sort, is we can update it. And you don't have to go buy a new book or be dealing with a book that's a few years old. We're able to respond to current events and new issues. So let's take a look at Europe and Eurasia. This has been in the news. We just had the anniversary of the Ukraine war. And this one, actually, it's not coincidental. We just updated it this week. So I thought I'd show it off. And so for this region and for all of our regions, you can see down the left-hand side, here's the menu of the different sections that we have. We have a timeline on modern history and US foreign policy, because we are at heart a foreign policy organization, but there's great material here, for geopolitics. We have sections on national politics about stories in individual countries, and then regional politics about sort of international issues. In Europe, for example, a lot about NATO and the EU, for example. The section on economics and a section on people and society for some of those sort of social and human issues. A great map here. You want a quick reference of, what do we count as part of Europe and Eurasia? That's how we define it. Not necessarily right or wrong, it's where we are. And so let's take a look at the timeline. Most of our timelines start, in the 20th century. Really, really proud of our graphics. Great visualization, for example, about the devastation that World War I brought. Thinking about, what were the different countries involved and the effects there. Great maps, former map of the Soviet Union here. I also want to point out a lot of these terms here are underlined. And you can see they have these dotted underlines. So if your students, they're taking geography, they're focused on geographic terms, but they come across something like, say industrialization, maybe that's not something you covered in geography this year. If they click on it, they can get a quick glossary definition and help them to understand, they're reading better by having this definition right at their fingertips. So this glossary is a great feature that we're really excited about. Great historical photographs bring things to life, but a lot of options for helping students have some of the historical context for a region that they might be studying. But let's take a look also, for example, here at national politics. If you're doing some geopolitics, this can be a great topic. And again, we have the photos here about the Dublin procedure, which has to do with asylum seekers in Europe. It's a complicated and very geographic issue because it has to do with where asylum seekers first show up. Put a lot of pressure on countries like Greece that are right along the border or close to countries that are sending migrants. And so a map like this can be really helpful. You can also kind of see, this is a map of countries that are trying to send people out to other countries. So it also serves as a map of where do asylum seekers want to go, sort of a map of their desires. So a really interesting conversation to be had here about the role of place in migration to Europe. What is so attractive about Germany and France? It's a really interesting question that can bring students' geographic skills to bear. Um, and so moving along, we can get different senses. Here's a great one of trying to untangle the difference between the EU and the candidates for the EU and European Free Trade Area and how all of that that works. So, and then we could take a look, for example, at regional politics. Again, here's a great graph if your students are trying to understand the EU. It's a lot. And I think our graphics team did a fantastic job of putting this together to help folks to see, how do sort of the national and the supranational bodies work together. It's a map of NATO, again, and you can zoom in because I know with the global map, it's a little bit hard to see, but again, really interesting conversations. Why did some countries join? Why did some not? What is it? How's this connect to where they are on the map? You know, Ireland probably feels pretty safe, without needing to be a member. Switzerland, Austria have got some protection. So anyway, some great conversations to be had here. And there's another map of Warsaw Pact. All right, but I don't want to linger too much on Europe. I know in history we talk a lot about the dangers of Eurocentrism. I don't want to be Eurocentric in geography either. So let's take a look at head back to take a look at Middle East and North Africa. And here again, we have the same organization. And that's one of the strengths, I think, of regions of the world is they are designed to be parallel. Right? Just like with Europe, we have a timeline on history and foreign policy. There's a national politics section. There's a regional politics section. There's an economic section. There's a people and society section. So there's some great opportunities here to put your students in groups and do some comparative work. It could be a great review tool of everybody gets a region, do some sort of a jigsaw gallery walk to summarize sort of what are some key issues or key events or key themes, and then share across those groups. Or you can certainly do a cross-cutting thing, if you're focused on maybe economic issues and looking at some geoeconomics in a unit. Send different students to the economics section of the different regions and see what they can come up with and see what are some similarities and differences that they come across. So let's take a quick look at the Middle East and North Africa modern history timeline. Again, have to have some of these graphs about how did the borders get where they are today, discovering oil. And then this is one of my favorites. We have this swipe feature, taking a look at the borders of Israel, what was proposed in 1947, and then 2 years later, after the War of Israeli Independence, where did everything end up? And this can be a really powerful way for students to swipe back and forth and see, what happened, where did everything go, and why. So some really great tools here to play with. So as I said, we're in the process of updating. The Asian regions should be up in the next few weeks, but even the stuff that we haven't quite gotten to yet, all written in the last couple of years. So very, very recent stuff, potentially more recent than some textbooks that may be in circulation. So hopefully can be a really useful supplement for a lot of folks. But regions of the world is great. It's the first thing I mention when people ask about geography, but I don't want to send the message it's the only place you can go for geography. So for example, here is one of my favorites. We have a lot of great case studies about a number of issues, and often the role of place and geography plays a big part in some of the issues that we cover. This resource is called What is Economic Statecraft, but functions in a lot of ways as an explainer about the Belt and Road Initiative, just China's effort to strengthen trade ties and transportation links really across Eurasia and Africa, Afro-Eurasia. So again, we have some great maps, all the places the Belt and Road Initiative has invested. Again, some really great questions here of like, what do all the red countries have in common? And what do some of the gray countries have in common? Why those countries? And then, some examples of what's driving the Belt and Road Initiative, and taking a look at, the role of Singapore, for example, as a choke point, can be a great question to think about and a way to bring together economics and geography and even foreign policy questions of why is China so interested in the South China Sea? That comes up, it seems every few years in the news. So we have lots of examples like this. Really, the best way to find what you're interested in. I really like the search function. For example, let's say we looking at some crops and agriculture. Maybe you've got a unit going on coffee. So I can just search for coffee, see what we have. Here's a great example of a video about climate change in coffee. A couple things I'll point out about our videos. These are, by the way, are all hosted on YouTube. We stick them on our website for easy finding, but if you would rather play them on YouTube, you can head to our YouTube page and check it out. If that's an easier way for you to embed it into your Google Classroom, your Power School, whatever, they are there. We also have, all of them have transcripts. Some of them you can just, there's a little click to download transcript link, or others, the transcript is just right there on the page. So if you have students who would benefit from being able to read along, they certainly can. Also, because it's YouTube, you can turn on closed captioning and play those captions while you're watching. So let's just take a moment. The last thing I'll say, our videos are short. We know, some people like to show a 45-minute video takes up their whole class period. That's not our philosophy. Our philosophy is, we want something to be quick, make a point or two, and then get out of your way so that you can do interesting things with what students have learned. Whether it's have a discussion, whether it's connected to another reading that you've got already in your curriculum. And so our videos tend to be under, tend to be 5 to 6 minutes at the most. And this one is even shorter. So let's watch a quick section of it.
Ever since the coffee bean was discovered in the highlands of Ethiopia over 1,000 years ago, the act of drinking coffee, shared with friends, family, and neighbors, remains an integral part of Ethiopian culture. Today, the caffeinated crop also plays a crucial economic role, but climate change puts it all at risk. And Ethiopia's not alone. Nearly all coffee is grown in the bean belt, with Brazil as the leading global coffee exporter, and it's produced almost exclusively in developing countries. 120 million people in 70 countries count on the global coffee industry, worth tens of billions of dollars, to make a living. Yet, like wine grapes, coffee plants can be sensitive and demand specific growing conditions to produce flavorful and balanced beans. That's why climate change poses such an existential threat. Warmer temperatures, more frequent droughts, intensified flooding, and increasingly hospitable conditions for insects and fungi that attack coffee plants.
I'll pause it there, but hopefully that gives you a sense of what we're doing. We're already halfway through the film. But it's one of my favorites. Looking at, we have a lot of materials on climate change, by the way, if that's an element of of your geography curriculum. We have lots on climate change. You can check out our website for that. But also, you don't want to lean into that, or that's not a big part of your curriculum. Still, it's a conversation about this particular region, some real effects of place, because coffee is so picky about where it grows. Certain elevation, certain latitudes. It's just not a lot of places where it works, and climate change is shrinking those places. So. Going back for a second here, we also, everything we've been looking at so far is designed for you to give to your students, but we also have resources for teachers. Here is an example of a lesson plan which incorporates that video. So like many lesson plans. Hopefully this all seems very familiar. We have learning objectives. This is designed for just a one period lesson plan for high school. We link to the materials that we use. So there's Climate Change, the Coffee Industry. That's the video we just watched. And then we have a couple of other readings about climate change and food security, and then about infrastructure and climate change. And then there's a handout that we'll use. All of our handouts, all the sort of what we call consumable items of a teaching resource like a lesson plan, we produced in Google Docs, because we know that many of you are using Google Drive, Google Classroom. So if you want to assign it as is to your students, very easy to import this into your Google Classroom. If it's not quite right, I know often you get something like, "Ooh, this is great, but like I want to change the wording of that question a little bit." I was always like that. Or like, "This is great, but I don't want to give them that much homework. I gave them something else as well. Let's only do, I have 4 questions about this reading. I only want to do 2 questions." You can make a copy of the Google Doc and edit it however you need to. Edit that copy and then give it to your students, because you know what your students need better than I do. You know how much time they have to do their homework, what else they have on their plates if it's a busy time of year. So this is meant to give you something to start with, but absolutely edit it to meet the needs of your students. So in this lesson plan, they watch that video and do some reading for homework. They do a little more reading in class with some guided reading questions. And then when I originally wrote this, there's a lot of research about climate change that you want to connect it to local issues. And so I suggested go read some local news and look for examples of how climate change is threatening food and water security. But in a geography classroom, you could very easily ask students to instead pick a particular country abroad. With the internet, we can read the news from a lot of places and learn about what's going on with food security and adaptation strategies in in whatever region or area that you're studying. I'll also point out, we pull out all the vocabulary words from the readings that are part of this lesson plan. So you can take a quick look and see, ooh, do I need to pre-teach any of these words? My students already know what all of these terms mean. And if you're on the fence, like, these are also all the words that are going to be included in that glossary tool. So they can go, check that out if they don't quite remember it. All right. I mentioned earlier on that we have alignment pages. So I don't know how many of you teach AP Human Geography. Even if you don't, you may find this useful. So we had been in the Learn section, but if you click on the Teach section, this gets you to the things that are meant for you as an audience, that are meant for you to, their lesson plans, their discussion questions for you to take and then use, and then for you to deliver to your students. So you can click through, and it tells you how many lesson plans, how many activities, sorted by topic. That's great. But if you scroll down a little bit, these course alignments, you can see we have a variety of courses. Maybe some of you teach some of these other courses as well. But I'm going to click on the AP Human Geography course alignment. And if you're familiar, like all AP courses, it's divided into units that are prescribed by the College Board. And so we've sorted by unit our resources. Unit 1 is called Thinking Geographically. Here's a bunch of resources that might be relevant to you while you're teaching that unit. You get the title with a link and a little summary of what it's about. Keep scrolling. Population and migration patterns. As I mentioned, we have a lot of great resources on migration because it's such a big foreign policy, international relations issue, as well as being a great geography issue. And you can see it includes not just readings, but also simulations. So speaking of simulations, I want to look at one really quickly, and then we'll move to questions. We have a great one about US Arctic policy. This is a mini simulation, so this is designed to be like a 1-period experience, 1 class period. Maybe you sign it for homework, maybe they read it first thing when they walk into class at the beginning of your period. We have short overview of what the simulation is about with some learning goals for you. But the real meat of it comes here. First, we have what we call the situation. Students are going to imagine that they are advisors to the President of the United States, and there's a problem. And we lay out what the problem is. In this case, we need to rethink what our strategy is in the Arctic. Um, Talking about the Northwest Passage and the Northern Sea Route. So we lay out all of that background for students. What's happened in the past? What are the issues? Um, and then we come to what we call the decision point. So this is like, what is the problem today? Why has the president called you into a meeting today? Students love the idea that they're advising the president in some way. And it lays out, all right, so what's the issue? We need to decide how the US should prioritize its interests. This is sort of a long-term planning. What are our priorities in the Arctic? And then we give what we call policy options. So students can help to guide students thinking about what are the universe of possibilities for solving this problem. We purposely try to always have 3 to 4 to really drive students away from sort of black and white thinking. We want them to think about multiple directions, multiple possibilities. And they certainly can, if they want, they can get creative, they can invent their own, they can combine two. But we find this is really helpful to get them started. And then we have some additional resources. So if students want to do a little bit more reading, if you want to expect a little more depth from them, here are some starting places for them. We've got another reading from the Council on Foreign Relations from our neighbors upstairs. And then the Arctic Institute is another think tank. War on the Rocks is a great sort of semi-scholarly blog magazine written by scholars, but at a very accessible level, which is really great. If you're looking for some guidance, if you've never done simulations before, you're a little shaky on how you like to run simulations or how you like to run discussions in general, you can click the view guidelines. It gives you some suggestions about how to shape, anything from a very straightforward think, pair, share exercise to, how could you run an actual simulation? So it gives you some ideas for how to approach this. All right, I'm going to pause there. I did see 1 or 2 questions fly by in the chat, which I'm going to go find for you. But if you have other questions, please toss them in the Q&A function on Zoom. One question that I definitely saw was, do you need a membership or a sign up of some kind? And the answer is no. Everything is free. Nothing requires a login. So you do not have to give out passwords. You don't have to find payment or anything like that. Does CFR offer any interactive games for teaching geography? Not really. I mean, we have the simulations that I was just speaking about. So like this, this Arctic, US Arctic policy simulation. It's a little bit like a game. Students get to pretend to be, policymakers or advisors to policymakers. And that can be really engaging and offer some of the benefits of games. We do actually have a game that we created. It's called Convene the Council. It's not the first thing I would think of for a geography class. It is much more about thinking about foreign policy and some of the issues that are faced and some of the policy tools that are at hand. So like, when would you choose diplomacy to solve a problem versus when would you choose some kind of an economic intervention? It's a lot of fun. We built it in collaboration with iCivics, who you may be familiar with. They are great at educational social studies games, and we're really proud of it. It's also free. You can play on the web. You can play on your Apple or Android device. So check that out if you want. Specifically for geography, not that's probably all that we have to offer. So I see some folks have some thoughts in the chat, so feel free to check those out. Do you host webinars specifically for students? At this point, generally, for the high school level, we don't really. We do have, so this is to find events, by the way. You can just go up to the top of any page under the About section, head down to Events. Um, we do have a series of what we call Global Affairs Expert webinars. These are aimed at the higher ed audience, but this is a future one. Let me find a one that has already happened. Here we go. Foreign influence in democratic governance. This was just last week. We do post recordings of these. So if you have sophisticated students, they're in the AP class, they're juniors or seniors, they're really interested in getting into some depth. Checking out this library of past recorded events might be really interesting. CFR, the think tank, also has some great recordings of events that can be really interesting. If you just head to the main CFR website, cfr.org. But we don't have anything aimed at high school students right now. We have quite a bit aimed at high school teachers. And again, you can check out our website for upcoming events. I see a question about South by Southwest EDU. Yes, we very specific, but great to hear from you. We are indeed going to South by Southwest EDU next week. We have 2 sessions. You can find the information right here. We have one about teaching climate change. Let me just pull this up and you can see for yourself, because I'm going to forget the titles otherwise. Teaching climate change across the disciplines, and teaching the headlines when world news strikes. So if you'll be in Austin, let us know. All right, I've gotten carried away. It is past 7:30. My colleagues would yell at me if I didn't very quickly show you. If you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, you can scan that QR code. And there's how to reach out to us. We are on social media. We frequently share current relevant events. And there's our email address. So if you have questions, you want to tell us how a resource worked out for you and your students, we'd love to hear those stories. Let us know. If you're going to be in Austin next week and want to meet up, let us know. If you're going to be at one of the other conferences we're going to and you want to let us know. If you have questions, anything like that. We're going to be on Blue Sky, not at the moment, but it's certainly something we're looking at. Because it seems like a lot of people are headed that way. So stay tuned, Allison. Great question about social media. But yeah, that is that. I'm happy to stick around if there's any final questions as you're packing up. But otherwise, have a great evening.